Good morning. Saeed Shaikh, Indiana heart physician, Franciscan Health. What do? Interventional cardiology. But what I am here to talk about is structural heart. Structural heart interventions. If it was up to Joshua, we'd have no problems, because he'd just turn on the genes off and you wouldn't need me. But until 2050, you need me. Okay, so let's go on. So, I'm going to take a divergent route. Okay, we talked about genetics. It was riveting. It was awesome. And we talked about electrophysiology and shocking the out of people until they live longer and longer. But what I'm going to submit to you is that, is living longer the best thing? Is that the only option? Can we not live better? Okay, so let's go to, do we have the clicker? Oh, silver? All right, got it. And let's go out here. There you go. So that's my favorite character, okay? Spock said, or the Vulcan salute, live long and prosper. We in this country live long. If you look at our median age, it's approaching 80 years. But do we prosper? That's the question. Somebody's got it figured out. She's doing the Vulcan salute. She's living long and she's prospering. Okay, so how do we get to be like the Queen? Okay, that's the question. So here comes structural heart. I'm going to submit to you that cardiology is not only looking at prolonging life, but making you live it better. That's where structural heart comes in. What is structural heart? If you were to put aside electrophysiology and coronary artery disease, what's left, which is congenital heart disease and valvular heart disease, falls under the domain of structural heart. We're going to talk about 3 of the procedures that are newest to the armamentum of cardiology. Okay, so I made 320 slides. We're going to go 40 slides per minute, warp speed. Okay, first, let's talk about left atrial appendage. We did not talk about atrial fibrillation in the morning, so we're going to touch on that a little bit, okay? Why would you want to occlude somebody's left atrial appendage? Let's talk about that. Okay, atrial fibrillation, an epidemic. Okay, it's going to be millions and millions of people in atrial fibrillation. One of the biggest things in atrial fibrillation is stroke. You are at increased risk of stroke. Stroke is the most expensive DRG facing us right next to CHF. To the entire nation, to our society, it's a big problem. In order to prevent stroke in AFib, you need to be on oral anticoagulants. About half the patients can't tolerate these oral anticoagulants. They go unprotected. Imagine that. About 5 million people, half of them not being protected from stroke in atrial fibrillation. Why is that? Well, I don't like to get stuck. The new agents are too expensive. I bleed a lot. I can't take them. So there are valid reasons why you cannot take oral anticoagulations. What is the cost of society? If you take warfarin and you have an adverse event, you bleed inside the head, intracranial hemorrhage, 20% of these patients end up in nursing homes and they never leave. If you don't take them, well, you're at risk of embolic stroke. So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place due to a narrow therapeutic window. Okay, so what is the inciting event? It is this little clot sitting in the left atrial appendage that embolizes, because that is the most inactive part of the heart. That is what forms the thrombus. That embolizes, goes to the brain, gives you a stroke. In more than 90% of the patients with AFib, that is the inciting event. So that's why the cardiologist said, let's attack that. So what we do is, we do a transeptal puncture. We go from the vein, make a slight hole in the heart, go from the right side to the left side, make our way to the appendage. You can see the appendage right here. And then we have to size the appendage because God has made all of us differently. Okay, there are these markers on the sheet, tell us what size device would this patient need. And once we have sized the appendage, we deliver the device. It's an umbrella-shaped device. It's called the Watchman. Once you deploy the Watchman, the device endothelializes, seals it off. Patient can come off Coumadin or Xarelto or Apixaban in 45 days for the rest of their lives. You can be in AFib and have the same kind of stroke reduction as oral anticoagulants without being on oral anticoagulants. Think about change in quality of life. No more being stuck, no more bleeding, no more intracranial hemorrhage for the rest of your life. If you get it done in 60s, think about the cumulative benefit over the lifespan of a patient who lives up to 80 or 85. Think about the benefit to society. Reduction in stroke. So once again, structural heart equals quality, not necessarily longevity. Okay, so let's move on. So this is a patient at Franciscan. When we do it in real time, it doesn't look like that beautiful cartoon. It looks like this. Okay, black and white, measure the appendage. This is me trying to poke a hole in the heart. You can see there's a needle trying to go from the right side of the heart to the left to get to the appendage. That's the aortic valve. This is the device part in the left atrial appendage. It looks like a little bit of a strawberry-shaped device. And if you like it, you go on. So this is what it looks like. I need to move on and go on to the next procedure. It's called MicroClub. This is for patients with mitral regurgitation. About 4 million people with mitral regurgitation. About 1.6 million or so have severe mitral regurgitation and don't get intervened upon because they're too sick. All right. Well, it looks like my pointer has, there you go. Maybe it'll go next time. Okay, if you were to look at patients with mitral regurgitation, about 40% of those patients in congestive heart failure, the most expensive DRG, right next to stroke, have mitral regurgitation. We cannot treat patients CHF because we cannot address the mitral regurgitation. So these patients are really sick and they are not surgical candidates. So what we do, we go and put a clip in the valve where the valve is leaking. So you can see this clip going exactly where the regurgitant jet or the orifice is and clipping it exactly where it needs to go. We don't have to stop the heart. We don't have to do a sternotomy. We go through a vein in the leg, make our way, just like we did in the Watchman, and place our clip right over the regurgitant jet. That's called a MicroClub. Okay. And once we have that, if you like it, we release the clip. The patient goes home the next morning. No intubation. Patients are as an outpatient procedure. No open heart surgery. So what are we trying to do with this? This is a clip patient. You can see a big jet going backwards into the left atrium. And this is after the clip. You can see that jet has disappeared. Once again, we did what takes an open heart surgery and convert it into an outpatient procedure. So what are we trying to do? Once again, we're not trying to make people live longer and longer, we're trying to make them live better. Okay, so the mitral regurgitation's gone, who cares about that? But their functional class has improved. If you were to look at the graphs, the orange and the purple are bad, and you can see post-procedure, they disappear. Okay, what's even more important is there's a 73% reduction in hospitalization. Once again, this is one of the biggest burdens on our healthcare is readmissions with congestive heart failure. If you were to look at these patients, you're not addressing their MR, you address it, you reduce readmissions. Okay, so the hospital administrators say, well, this doesn't give me the net. Open heart surgeries give me a bigger profit. And a transcatheter procedure doesn't. This is what I say to them. I don't care. I care about the patient. All right? I don't care about your net. But they have to, they have to remain in black, and we get it. But at the same time, we have to do what's best for the patient. If you look at readmission penalties for the hospital, they're through the roof as well. So lastly, we're going to talk about TAVR. TAVRs are being done, transcatheter aortic valve replacement, are being done more and more so in less and less risky patients. It just got approved for intermediate risk patients. Patients in your offices are there with TAVRs. They're going to tell you they have a TAVR, so you need to know about this a little bit. What is going on? Well, the intermediate risk patients, when we call intermediate risk, the mortality is 3 to 5%. You can look at the trials. The trial data is showing with the TAVR, the mortality is only 1%, so it's about 75% reduction in expected mortality. Okay, that is why TAVR is so popular and your patients have it. Okay, so if you were to look at it, this is TAVR being done, a surgeon and a cardiologist together, which hardly ever happens, but it happens there. Okay, so we got a valve going in through the left femoral artery, a pigtail coming to the right, and then we're going to put patients in rapid AFib. Yes, we're going to almost defibrillate them without electrophysiology to get the patient's heart in somewhat of a standstill, and we put up a valve. You can see the valve going up right there. And then you end up with a new valve. Okay. So, TAVR, surgical AVR, takes 230 minutes. We get TAVRs done in about 80 minutes. The other day we did 4 and we were done by 1 p.m. Okay, so reduction in cost for the system is inherent. Okay, this is what the latest thing is with regards to TAVR. There used to be sternotomies, that's gone. Then we used to do cut downs, that's gone. This is what a patient with TAVR looks like. We deploy the sutures here before we start, we dilate, we do the procedure, and when we close, the incision is as wide as my thumbnail. These patients walk from PACU to their room. Walk. I repeat, walk. So we gave them a new valve, this is their incision, and they're walking out of PACU in 2 hours. This is quality. Okay, so maybe cardiology can't, maybe cardiology is shifting its paradigm from longevity to quality of life, and that's why Spock said what he said, was logic is just the beginning of wisdom. And maybe cardiology can't make you live like a queen, but we can get you close. And close would be this. So that's my ending slide. Thank you. Appreciate it.